was spending time, because even though we're at way above capacity for our signups, not all the chairs are filled, so I want to make sure that people have time to do that. We have a lot of things to announce before our speaker, but I did want to acknowledge that we have a sponsor tonight, GameSim, and I wanted to introduce Greg Bartlett. If you come up or stand right there and talk. Thank you.
Beer and pizza, there you go.
Yes.
Anyways, much like I think a lot of you guys, I'm actually starting up a new portion of GameSim, which is part of Keywords, and so we're starting up a DevOps service here in Austin, mainly oriented towards game studios, but we're part of GameSim, which is out in Florida. They just missed the hurricane, so all safe there, but much like them, we're a group of DevOps engineers, and we're really just around to try and solve problems, right? Help our customers solve problems. We've been helping people with cloud assessments, saving costs in the cloud, kind of doing DevOps well. And there's just a number of things we can help our customers do. So anyways, I just wanted to once again thank you all for coming, and hope you appreciate the beer and pizza and GameSim part of Keywords.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg and Mark, and I'm sure my co-host Gordon Walton also appreciates some help in paying for all this, because usually he's the one who does it. But if anyone else is interested in that wonderful branding that I'm giving right now, you can tell how practiced I am. Please let us know, because we don't want to do this without food and drink. It's kind of a campfire thing. It's like, it's primal, the idea that you will listen more if you've actually not having to worry about being thirsty or hungry. So, and I realize some of you probably came straight from work and haven't been home yet. So. Again, this show, we do it every other month right here at Capitol Factory, and yes, we did try to get the other room. There's at least 2 other events going on at Capitol Factory, so it's always catch can. But once upon a time, 40 people was normal, so we're effectively at least 150 to 200% of normal. But again, how many speakers are starting up new studios, and how many sponsors are starting up a new studio for that matter? So I understand the interest in all of it. But one thing that becomes apparent is that people will sign up, and I get to read all the time to answer the question about why you're interested in this show, and a lot of you seem to not be aware that there are game dev-facing events going on in Austin like all the time, like at least 2 or 3 times a week, and I understand that I may be the way that you find out about this stuff, so that's why I'm putting this stuff on the board. Either of these 2 links right here, I have calendars of events that at least reach out a week or at much a month. So again, everyone's busy. What's the natural state of a game developer? It's busy, right? Even when every time you find yourself having time to spend, let me get out of the way. Just take a picture. You have to decide on what to spend your time doing, and going home is one of those options always. But it's important, especially for all of you, and I don't know yet how many of you are looking for work, but really that's probably like all the time. Even the ones who have the work need to continue to build their network and or at least maintain it. So the good news is we live in Austin, so there's opportunities for that. You just have to put yourself out there. So again, just want to encourage that. I don't think people say that enough. And the truth is most people aren't very good at that. And most people think that networking is some arcane magic, but in truth, really what it is saying, hi, my name is, this is what I want, this is who I am, this is what I expect to happen to me in the near future, and have the other person return in kind. That's all it is. But, and again, no one gets good at anything without practice. This is a thing, human interaction, so I encourage everyone to practice as much as possible. But one thing we do like to do before we introduce the speaker is talk about the job haves and job have-nots. So we'll start with the have-nots. Who is looking for work? Starting at the front and going back on this side. Go ahead, stand up. Be able to say your name, what you want to do, and whether you have business cards.
My name's Ronnie. I'm an artist. I'm looking for a concept art job at a studio, and I have business cards.
Very good. Concept arts. Okay. Please stand up.
I'm Arcadius. I'm looking for a Unity 3D developer job. I made some games already. I worked with some AR, developed some apps, and yeah.
Arcadius. That's what I heard that right. Awesome. All right. This row. Next row.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm a UX
Very good.
My name is Mike Loisel. I am a game designer. I'm looking for a job. I have business cards.
Very good. People are learning from this because I reserve the right to mock you if you didn't come to a networking event without business cards. All right, this side. You stand up.
Okay, my name is Mike Marsh. I'm actually just getting into the gaming fit. I was a BIM manager, just got laid off about 2 months ago, so I decided to try and take this up because I've practiced it for a while. Not necessarily great at it yet, but I'm seeing what happens. And no, I don't have any business cards because I haven't made any up yet.
Okay. Now you know how to do that. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Tyler Barrett, currently in IT, looking for a position in a QA team. I also have business cards.
Very good. Yes, right.
Ron Kavanaugh, technical management, technical production engineer, been at Disney, Samsung, Warcraft. So look for a gig. I don't believe in business cards.
You don't believe in them. Do you believe in LinkedIn?
I do.
Okay, well, you can at least plug that one. Okay, very good.
He was at
Yes.
Disney. Believes in
Then Disney can kick him back anyway.
I'm Matt Schnell, and I'm a creative writer who is currently learning Unity. Well, it's slow going, by the time I get home, I'm going to be tired and just rush out. I rushed out of here because I almost forgot about this thing, and so I do not have any business cards.
Yeah. It'll become a habit, you know, with enough mockery. So,
That's your hope. By the way, we got lots of chairs up front. So,
Yes.
you know, it's hard to see them from the back, but we got lots of chairs.
yes, please. So just to remind everyone, we need to be Big G gone by 9 o'clock. That is just a rule of this. Actually, when our helpful clerk out front is going to actually be leaving. And if you parked in the underground garage here, you will want to get a slip from her so you can get out for $7 as opposed to $36 or whatever it'll cost in there. If you parked in the street or somewhere else, don't worry about it. But anyway, it's about 10 after 7, so I'll introduce our speaker of the evening, and he's a great friend of ours.
Who's hiring?
What?
You forgot about the who's hiring.
Oh, is anyone doing that? I guess I probably ought to do that. Okay. Who's hiring? That's the other half of the job haves and job who's not. Who is looking to hire people? Start on this. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jake Ross, senior producer at Cloud Green Games, and we are looking to hire server engineers, gameplay programmers, designers, we got QA, and a workplace coordinator as well. Anything else I'm forgetting? That's it. Okay. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize for that. Usually I'm pretty good about this stuff. Anyway, I only get to practice every other month.
Hi, I'm Steven. I make robots play laser tag, and we're now making them play with AR guns. So, and if anyone else has some interest in making robots shoot AR bombs, some other stuff, please let me know. Thanks.
Very important. All right. Yes.
I'm Chad Malden, I'm with Bomb Dog Studios, looking for a character artist and an animator.
Right on. Okay. How about this side of the room?
Hi, I'm Brett Close. I'm with Daybreak Games here in Austin, soon to be rebranded. Top secret. Can't tell you.
Oh.
Don't tell us and kill us.
I hear that's for
Somebody knows Sony.
Yeah. Don't get me started.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much across the board, but I'm VP of Technology, so I in particular am looking for awesome engineering and tech folks, but artists, designers, generally passionate people who love to build games or love to think about building games. Come talk to me. I don't have any business cards, by the way, but you can find me. It's super easy.
Yes. Brett Close.
I got some too.
Okay. Which other of you?
Good.
Oh, I'm Jason Spar. I've got a UX UI consultancy, but we're actually reaching out and doing concept arting and other kinds of art as well. If you're interested more in branding and identity, look and feel of games and that sort of stuff. So we're looking mostly for subcontractors. We're not doing hires right now full time. So if you're interested in UX UI, some sort of art subcontracting, if you are a UI prototyper in Unity or Unreal, definitely interested as well in talking to you. I have business cards, so please reach out.
Yes, Gordon.
need a VFX artist and a 3D programmer and a tech artist. But I hear that, you know, Rooster Teeth may be giving me some this week.
Yeah, that was the unfortunate news today.
It's good.
For some,
Help people out.
Well,
It's about the people. It's not
Yeah.
about the companies. It's true.
It's
Always about the people.
it's a good news for Austin when we have studio closures or cutbacks and people who want to stay here can find another gig. That didn't used to be true, or it used to be a lot harder and used to be much larger, head counts involved. But yeah, we started this year with only one studio closing and that was only 50 people. But then a lot of those people are finding new gigs. So Austin will survive. And again, related to what I was saying earlier about practicing talking to other people, all the people that have just, put their faces to their employment status and who they are, it's worth knowing who they are, even if they're not going to hire you. So just imagine you're actually just going to meet someone and present yourself with the best version of yourself that you possibly can. It will be worth it for them to remember you as someone decent. And for all the people who are coming in, please come up to the front because we do have some chairs. Yes, thank you.
And we don't bite.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in and making it, again, this is by far the largest crowd that we've had in quite some time. And we'll probably have some more people coming in. So anyone closer to the doors, they can let people know that we have some chairs closer to the front. It's harder to see when there's so many people around. But again, thanks everyone for coming. We introduced our speaker tonight. He has recently made a clean break from his previous employer and is starting up a new studio called Enduring Games. Please welcome Adam Creighton.
Hey everybody, I am Adam Creighton. We are hiring. We'll get into some of that later. I'll talk a little bit about that. I really appreciate everyone coming. I am always amazed when someone asks me to say anything, and more amazed when people show up. So I really appreciate it. You're giving up of your evening, you're giving up of time with family, and you're driving in Austin. So all of those are very good deals. So I appreciate y'all coming here. So creating a commercially viable game studio that lasts, hopefully. So nothing is guaranteed. I'm gonna walk through some stuff. We'll see if we come away any wiser, or you just ask why you spent the evening with me. Just a quick caveat. So yeah, I use a lot of images and public domain stuff and some licensed stuff. I'm not co-opting any of those things. Those belong to other people. I'm not making commercial gain on these folks' stuff. Thank you. All right, so this is going to go badly, and it's good to set expectations up front. And the reason is we all have expectations. You have them, I have them. They don't necessarily match. There's people that are going to get some things out of this. There might be some people who don't. This is going to be a mix of logistics and philosophy. So if you're looking for kind of a recipe for how to start a new studio, this is not that per se. But we'll talk about a couple of things around that. All right, speaking publicly is dangerous for speakers. We live in this world where everything lasts forever. Haters gonna hate. We got trolls and shit posters and everything else. And any slide, any frame, anything I say can be taken out of context, remixed. Someone do some dubstep for me because I can't, so that'll be great. And the current societal norm is reactive and penalizing. And that's kind of a scary thing. So any of your help with that is super appreciated. Unless I earn it. So one of our single defining behaviors right now as a society is we will spend more time making someone wrong than we will doing right. And that's a really kind of scary thing. We're recording, are we recording this session?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So,
Speaking of,
so we're
forever.
We're recording that, that's fine. So I'm also going to record all of you. This is going to help me out. This is how I protect me. Here we go. This will make me feel. It's also a timer, so that works out really well. All right, so we'll see how this goes. It's going well so far. All right, our next slide. All right, truth. I don't have it all figured out. Nobody does, but I think it's important when anyone speaks from a position of authority that we kind of talk about what our shortcomings are. I make a lot of mistakes. I am either moving forwards or backwards. I think any human being is. I don't think being stuck is a luxury any of us get. So we're either getting better or we're getting worse. And nothing is guaranteed. So we're going to talk about some things I'm doing for my studio, some things I've learned over the last 25 years. That's not a prescription for complete health moving forward. On the flip side of that, I want to be better. I genuinely do, and I want to help other people be better. I want the world, I want our industry to be better, and I do the work. And we'll talk about some of what that work is for everybody. Except my mouse is dying. All right. So we're going to talk from a place of authority because, and there's actually, and I don't think he made it tonight. There's a lot of things that I think any speaker has that makes it valuable to share with other people. I met a guy who's fascinating through a friend of a friend, and I think he and I are actually going to become fast friends. And he is this very higher functioning, all of these positive characteristics, and he can talk through what he does, what he has to add, how he has a high emotional intelligence, all this other stuff, and he's right about all of it. He doesn't sound arrogant or braggy at all. The guy, it's an amazing gift. I don't like talking about stuff that I potentially can do because sometimes people put additional weight on it. Like, oh, if I do this thing that worked for Adam, maybe it'll work for me. It doesn't always work that way. I'm just figuring stuff out, just like any of us are. So a lot of what I do when I talk is just kind of share some of the things that have gone well, some that have gone badly, and how hopefully we can all be better moving forward. All right, so let's talk a bit about my background. So I firmly believe every human being has value as a uniquely created human being. I have gifts and skills, so I therefore have a responsibility to do something with those gifts and skills to make the world a better place. Messing up is part of being human. It's not an excuse for sloppiness, though. We don't get to leverage that for. Hey, Ethan, how's it going, man? Good to see you. And it's also not an excuse for bad behavior, and it's not a weapon to be used against people. And that's fairly important because unfortunately we see this a bit, and maybe arguably a little more in our industry than others. We'll see. So no matter our role, we're contributing to the success of our business. It really is just a matter of scale and fit and return. So even if you're not planning to start a new business or a studio, or you're not necessarily thinking of joining a new studio or business, a lot of these things I hope apply as we all move forward and look at what we want to do and what we want to do better in the world. So if you like Captain America, I do. Captain America Civil War, I do. He says, my faith's in people, I guess, individuals, and I'm happy to say that for the most part, they haven't let me down, which is why I can't let them down either. And this matches very well with my personal ideology. It is really about the people, it's about the relationships, it's about what we can do together. That doesn't mean they won't let you down, it doesn't mean you won't put your faith in the wrong people, and more on that in a little bit. All right, so some history, there's kind of my background and how I was raised and family, and then going into enterprise with IBM and Tivoli and Globset and Visa and on up the stack to what we're going to do now. But when you look at that across a timeline, I've got all these different companies that I've worked with. It's been with Department of Energy through our new Enduring Games stuff. And that's a mix of everything from retail to government to enterprise to startup, back to enterprise to small business to big media to small business to startup, which is going to become small business hopefully very soon. And just kind of this iterative loop that gives me a lot of experience with how to run very large organizations, very small organizations, startups within an organization, startups outside of an organization. And all of that kind of feeds into this stuff that I'm looking at now. I grew up in the equivalent of Hawkins, Indiana, and Southeast Idaho, northern Utah, same state. They just won't admit it. And moved to Austin, went to North Carolina for a couple of years as I got into middleware, and then back to Austin because I really do love this town quite a bit. Creative throughout. This is very important to me. I did my first game when I was 11, 12, Visual Basic, Atari ST. I did 3 or 4 different games that I did in my house. And just throughout, I wanted to make things. And then I had kind of these big explosive moments where I'm like, I just can't be not making stuff. I'm just done. I gotta make stuff. It's over. So my pyramid actually looks kind of more like this, which is really messes with my OCD. But some of the things that really informed a lot of the stuff that I've done and what I'm doing moving forward is things like a little company called Globset and all the stuff it did right and all the stuff it did so wrong. In the startup.com era, and then Visa for the large enterprise stuff as a pre-private company, and then going public to emerging game technologies and middleware and working in small business, but very tech-centric game development, and then Disney working with a large enterprise media conglomerate. And those are big things that all together are the biggest chunk of career, and there's other stuff from everything, but that's the big stuff. So this next thing that we're going to look at now, because my next thing is Enduring Games. And the whole idea was to build something that lasts, something that it has a positive tone, has a positive impact, and will stand the test of time and create things that stand the test of time. And a lot of effort went into this, and we'll talk about some of the values and how things go. So, but why would I do this though? You got this giant $80 billion a year industry, and I'm trying to take a piece of it over and over and over again. And I think it makes sense for all of us to kind of walk through why I did that. I can only talk about me, and then you can decide if there's something that fits within that for you, or if you've wasted your evening. So starting a company, there's a few things I did between what I was doing before and what I did now. I took a beat. I just took a break and said, okay, I need, for a bunch of reasons, but I just need to kind of reset, decide what I like, decide what I want to keep doing, decide what I don't want to do. Did some consulting work, was able to help several small studios make them bigger. That was everything from helping with some business stuff, to helping with some internal culture things, to some branding, to contract negotiation for them, or that kind of thing, to help them get bigger, because it also gave me a lay of the land for the talent that's out there, and some things that I wanted to do moving forward. I was solicited for multiple high-level individual contributor type roles. This is not meant to be bragging, I'm just trying to show the range of the opportunities that I had, because that's going to be important for something we're going to talk about a little bit later, as far as why you choose one thing versus another, and it's a very individual thing, honestly. And if you look at, I'll say it later, that's fine. Multiple conversations with starting new studios, but it was starting other people's studios. Hey Adam, we want you to start our second studio, we want you to start our 18th studio, or whatever, that's a lie, it was his 12th studio, but, and in Austin. And so there were some good opportunities there, but they were for other people. And then I took a lot of time navel gazing and thinking about the last 25 years and the next 25 years and what I've done and what I want to keep doing and how do I take it to this next level as I move forward. And the why is important, right? Because the reality of it is every one of us is reverse Benjamin Buttoning. And so as we move forward in time, this gets harder to do. We've got to keep up, we have to stay relevant, we have to keep contributing, we've got to grow people at every level. But part of what's exciting about that is we have more and more and more exposure to how to take care of people at different levels, different life stages, different needs, different desires, different motivations. And that's, to me, that's exciting. I really like that, but we'll talk about why I like that soon. All right, so as I was looking at what do I do next, I came down to 3 different things that were kind of, for me, winnowing factors as I looked at these different kinds of opportunities, and then each individual opportunity. So impact is really important, means is important, authority is important, and walking through each of these. So impact is how do I positively contribute to this industry I love in a big way. Means is, does this position that I'm being solicited for, or I'm looking at doing, or what I'm going to change, does that give me the things I need to do the things I need to do? And authority really is about empowerment. It's how much am I able to make choices about the means that I have to do the things I need to do, when and how I need to do those things. Because if I'm going to leverage the things that I'm good at and mitigate the things that I'm bad at, I need to be able to act with authority, with responsibility, with means to achieve my impact. So when I was looking at the individual contributor side of things, I started just kind of doing an up-down matrix for some of this stuff. And there's being an individual contributor, and the impact is higher. So if you look at the different companies that I've worked with over the years, right? Just imagine whatever role you want to think of that's a director or executive role at these big companies. That has a lot of impact, but it has impact on a narrow slice, right? It has an impact for a platform, or it has an impact for a vertical slice of technology, or it has an impact for a company or a company type. And the means can be way up there. I mean, there are some companies that are doing really well. When people are talking about making $12,000 a day or $150 million a month or things like that, there's some companies that are just doing gangbusters, right? So the means for people who know what to do with those means and are responsible about it are pretty impressive. The authority goes way down though, because as an individual contributor, I'm fitting in, even at an executive level, I'm fitting in within other things that the companies are doing. Other plans, other external investors, multiple teams. I'm not a person who's going to come in and disrupt all sorts of things. I will totally come in and disrupt all sorts of things. But I have to work within rails. And there are good rails and there are bad rails. Someone else's studio and brand, the impact is less, right? They've got a studio, they've got a brand, they've got something that exists. The means for a lot of the things I was talking about, it's not like people were saying, hey, found our premier studio in Austin and it's an open bank account. It was, hey, you're really good at running a business. You know how to do a lot with a little. We want you to do that for us, and over time you're going to have more means. But we really want to be fiscally responsible and tight on everything and very conservative about everything that we do. And then again, authority was far down on that kind of thing because it's working within defined brands, which I want to do. Even if someone wants me to come in and help redefine a brand, I want to be very respectful of that legacy, that history, that thing that has already been built and has an attachment. Unless it's a very negative brand or a dead brand, and that's a different kind of challenge. And those can be exciting things too. Higher risk, and you really don't know whether you succeeded or not until you get to the other side, honestly. So then I had this other pivot point inflection, and actually I was meeting with Rise Deacle, who's a really brilliant guy in the industry, and he does independent consulting for smaller studios, large scale companies, and helps with M&A and some other stuff. And I walked him through this impact means and authorities like, yeah, you're missing a piece. The piece you're missing is upside. Because that's part of why you're evaluating all of these things, and do you want to be a big contributor and get nothing for it, and it really is just a job? Or do you want to be a huge upside where you can not only take care of yourself, but you can take care of the people who helped you get there? Which I thought was really wise, and I really appreciated because it was something that was kind of on the back of my mind. I was doing things in threes because I like threes. So we messed up my model, but that's totally fine because the upside's good. Then I had this second meeting at the same conference where a platform owner friend of mine said, hey, Adam, what do you say you do best? And I did this very diplomatic, I make great games for your platform. And he was very nice because he did not snicker at me. I think he wanted to snicker. So I said, I make great games for your platforms. And he said, yep, you do, but what do you do best? And I've known him for a while, and he's known me for a while, and I understood that I had given the wrong answer. So I thought about it, and what I realized is, look, I grow people. I build teams to do things that are bigger and better and more aspirational than we're able to do on our own. And we do bigger and better and more noticeable than teams that are even bigger than us. And he said, yep, that is what you do. And that gave me some more clarity on making some decisions. So when I look at starting a company and a wholly owned studio, and Enduring Games is a it's terrifying, self-funded, wholly owned studio with a very good equity model that takes care of the people who are taking risk with me, because nobody can make well, used to be you could say nobody can make a game on their own. There are some great games people make on their own. When I look at making a commercial entity and the scale at which we want to do things, that's not something I'm going to do on my own. I have a lot of skills, I have a lot of gifts, but I need people. Also, I also really like people. Given that my particular skill is unlocking stuff with people or getting out of the way of people or getting them what they need, it makes sense for me to form a new business in a studio. So the impact is really high because it's my studio. I get to define everything from the brand to the values in iteration with my team and make sure that it's something that will last and stand the test of time. The means starts out really small, right? You know, I have a bajillion kids, and first one's just gone to college, and then I've told the others that they better start working now. 9-year-old, that's make it work. I'm just gonna hire all of them. I don't know. If anybody has an idea, just tell me how I'm gonna figure all this out. But the means goes up over time because I very aggressively and historically have done this across multiple companies, whether it's an internal budget or my own budget or whatever. I'm able to build a very commercially successful ramp that lets us do more and more and more in a healthy way, without sandbagging, without usury, without abuse, or anything like that of partners, because they're true partnerships. And then the authority, of course, is way up. I get to work with people and say, okay, look, this is how we need to spend our effort and time. This is what I need us to focus on. This is how we're going to spend the money. This is what we're going to do as we build a brand. So the authority is way up there. The upside, potentially, is very, very good, right? There's the visibility, there's, God willing, the positive reputation of the studio, there's the improving the industry, and then hopefully there's a big commercial upside in that thing over time also. I'm going to talk about motivation for working, whether you're starting a studio or just doing a 9-to-5, so we'll come back to the upside thing in a bit. So it's so hard to talk about values for a company, just like mission and vision. Blah. But super important, right? Values are the backbone of any company. But you want to be careful about not having too many values, because otherwise you end up with like a snake. You know, snakes are, do you guys know that snakes have between like 200 and 400 vertebrae, each with like ribs attached? Found it out. I learned stuff while I was making this presentation. I'm wiser. My kids think I'm really cool. It's not true at all. Our values, so enduring games values, we have 5. The first is character matters. One of the challenges with values is it's very easy to dismiss words. And part of what I do is look at how do we make sure that they're not just words? What is the meaning? What is the intent? What are the teeth behind this? Character does matter. Integrity, personal integrity, knowing that I can trust people, knowing that people have my back, knowing that they know I've got them, and not worrying about things that don't matter. Hey, Adam, I'm going to be out because I got to do a doctor's appointment for a family thing. Yep, you do. You do that. There's no penalty. Who cares? Yes, that's the more important thing than anything you have going on the work front. So it's really important that we have strong character in the people we hire. That's our #1 criteria as we look at people. And there's some stuff that I ask and talk about when I interview people that it's obvious. There's some stuff they think is obvious that's not. It's always the wrong answer if you talk to me, I promise. And then there's a bunch of stuff that's just subtle stuff I do as I look. And also, and this is the harder one, it's not like I'm always going to get this right. It's not like I have some magic divining rod to know, okay, this is a good person, this is a bad person, this is a good person. I wish, but then I'd be in a different business, probably making lots of money. Quality in everything. So the idea is we build anything, whether it's something we're partially involved in or we wholly own or whatever else, and it is a quality product. It is something that inarguably when someone looks at it, they go, oh, that's amazing, that's really nice, and we don't have to tell them it's nice. It's one thing if you release something and you say, oh, look at the work we did, look at how amazing this thing is, and you tell them the story of why it's amazing, and they can say, yeah, that's good. You did that with that budget and that timeline and that challenging partner and blah blah blah. It's way better if someone looks at it and goes, oh, that's the Impossible port. I don't know how you guys did that. That's the good stuff. Everything is a product, so everything has a price. Everything has a customer. Everything has a distribution. Everything has a quality bar. And that product mindset is super important for me and for the team, because we're not just making a thing that goes out that we don't think about anymore. We're doing long-standing relationships that stand the test of time and products that stand the test of time. Everything's a project. So you got the product side of things. The project side of things, everything has got a budget. It's got milestones. It's got due dates. It's got success criteria. It's got deadlines and go, no-go decisions. So looking at everything as a project and everything as a product helps us focus on the time and effort that we spend on these things as we flip from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. At a broad level, it's a portfolio-based company that does everything from co-development and ports to digital distribution to original intellectual property. And as we look at these things, we need to be able to decide which of these things we focus on in which order. And one of the exciting things about a company like this is we work on so much stuff. As we're negotiating our initial slate of projects, the caliber and diversity of projects that we are discussing is fantastic. Most people don't get to talk about these kinds of projects. Like, hey, do you want to reimagine this particular brand from your childhood? Why, yes, I do. I very much do. And I treat that very seriously, not as a, oh, look at me, wink, wink, I have a secret I can't tell you about. Because nothing is a thing until it's signed, and even then it's not a thing until you're paid, and even then it's not a thing until it's shipped, and even that's not a thing. And then we're a center of excellence. So one of the things that separates us, if you look at being a services organization, and you look at it on paper, and you look at like a coming down economy and some other stuff that's in the wind, it makes no sense to be a services organization. And I've got a very successful history of making a very lucrative services organization. But we are a center of excellence, not a body shop. So we do bigger, better things with specialized resources that a lot of people don't have access to, with a product mindset that makes it different. So I'm not competing against 128 other companies. I'm competing against 8. And I'm really not competing against 8. I'm competing against one, mine. Because we're always going to be raising the bar for what we do. So your values create expectations, and these are things I have internally and externally, and I leverage these for my team, myself, and our partners. So those expectations include things like doing a good job. You got to do the job for which we hired you. That is first and foremost and most important, because that's what we did. And yep, you want other opportunities. You are so going to get other opportunities. You're going to work on so many things. At some point, you're going to be like, can I not get more opportunities? You have to be accountable. And all this stuff, there's a bunch of this stuff on our website about some of this stuff. And then people who know me, I don't want to go through this a bunch because I beat this drum a lot. The accountability side is really important. And again, as far as not being words, it's not just words. People will talk to me and they're like, Adam, I love that value. I love accountability. I'm like, you don't get it. Because accountability sucks. Accountability is being on the hook and saying, okay, I screwed up, and doing it proactively and being part of the solution and taking the lumps and learning from it and getting better moving forward. Accountability is not about making people wrong, it's about making people better. And that's a very important part of my mindset and the culture of the studio. Collaborate, genuine collaboration. I love the startup thing because all of us are doing just whatever it takes. And that doesn't matter whether it's, we got some game design ideas, or we have to evaluate a game engine and a project, or we have to very, very soon, he's not here, but surprise, we have to build some machines and they all have to be done right now. We have to learn quickly, we got to self-direct. You know, people talk about wanting self-starters, and when you are in a high-performance organization, you have no choice but to be a high performer. We have to be delivering and firing on all cylinders all the time. Balancing that with that we're human, and we have to be very careful about not burning people out or overdoing things or anything like that. Need to communicate, and that's a big communication thing. It's not just hey, talking to each other. We've got to be crisp, we've got to be efficient, we've got to let people know for the things that we want, and we need to let people know before things are a problem or if we're missing information. We have to know the state of the art because it's changing all the time. And we can't do things like, oh, yep, I'm really excited about hardware ray tracing because visuals, well, you're missing a whole bunch of other stuff we need to be talking about too that fits into the design and gameplay and challenges with streaming and everything else. Maintaining confidentiality. The game industry is horrid at confidentiality. It makes me so upset. Confidentiality is key because people mess that up, you're done. It's just, you're done at the studio's done. You do it at the wrong time and place. You can't be the person that goes into the lobby of your building and talks on the phone about your secret project that you're excited about, and then there's some person from a news website that's in the lobby and listening to you and then is writing it up as news. Totally made up story that might have happened 2 years ago. Not to me, someone else. And then working with urgency. So if you have something to work on, it needs to get done. It needs to get done now. So if it's not urgent, either I don't understand the urgency, or I've given something that isn't urgent, so we shouldn't be working on it, but at the very least we have to talk about it so that if we're working on it with that sense of urgency. So you have your values, create expectations, and those two things create a filter that let you figure out your decisions and your priorities. So we look at things as is it taking care of people, is it good for the company, and does it make a quality product? And those things can be in competition with each other sometimes, but taking care of the company is taking care of people. If you have a mismatch and you have to make a change for the health of the organization, that's taking care of people and taking care of the company. And if your mindset is to take care of the company and take care of the people, you're going to do it in a way that takes care of human beings and is not callous and dismissive and hurtful in a situation that can be a very hurtful thing. So a little bit about my leadership. I am a calico cat of leadership things, but a couple of them that rise to the top are the servant leadership side and the transformational leadership, which I wish I had a different name because it feels weird to say. I'm a transformational leader. But servant leadership, basically you help other people. You share authority, you put the needs of people ahead of yourselves. That doesn't mean that you are not careful about the time you spend for yourself. And you help people develop and perform and do the things they need so they can keep moving forward all the time. You don't abdicate power or accountability. You don't avoid blame. You're not a walked-on witness or anything like that. And you don't not give critical feedback. I like when people discover servant leadership or transformational or whatever that's been around for decades for the first time, because there's this new refreshed conversation that happens. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, servant leadership came up and was trending on LinkedIn, and people were talking about it. And there was a really good discussion about, hey, if you're a servant leader, yep, you're taking care of people. That does not mean you don't give constructive critical feedback. That does not mean you hold people accountable and you make changes, and if they don't change, you make changes. And that's something that I think people miss a lot of times in servant leadership, where a lot of people want to push away. And again, this or other leadership styles are all very personality and process and other dependent. So it's a mix of who the person is, what the organization is, what the values are, and all that kind of thing. In transformational leadership, it's okay, I have a vision and I can see these things that need to happen. And I need to create and articulate and hold that vision so that I'm not just a guy pushing something on people, but I'm getting everybody alongside to understand what that is. And I need to inspire and encourage people to make those changes along with me. And make that change with other committed people. It's not just in a vacuum, it's with people. It doesn't mean ignoring input, it doesn't mean not changing or expanding the vision, it doesn't mean not being flexible, or it does not mean creating input cliques where there's a cabal that makes choices about things. And that's different than honoring hierarchy or things like that. I mean, if there's a clique or an insiders club or insiders baseball when there should be other people involved. So I have a bias that says there are three kinds of companies. There are lifestyle companies, which are, hey, I want to work on the things I want to work on when I want to work on them, and make the money I want and enjoy life. And there's the money making, which is anything to turn a dime. And then the aspirational, which wants to transform the industry or create or expand a new market and that kind of thing. I don't believe lifestyle companies exist. I've seen these a few times where I'm like, you guys think you have a lifestyle company, and then you finish the thing that you're happy to work on, and then you mad scramble and tighten your belts for 6 months, and you find the thing you didn't want to work on, and you do that and build enough war chest, and you find the thing you do want to work on, and then you cycle through every 3 to 6 months, and you're just miserable. Money-making companies can be very exploitive. They can be, I want to make a dime, and that means even if the people who helped me get there have to go away, I'm going to do that. And then there's the aspirational, which one of the things they struggle with is commercial viability. And that's where you'll see things in the not-for-profit or the NPO or any of those kind of things. So for us, I wanted to create an aspirational, commercially lucrative company. That's what I did the last few times. And then I wanted to create a go-to center of excellence for making games. And I want to make those things special for upcoming console hardware and business models. And so that's kind of the linchpin for the stuff that we're doing. Vision, I made fun of Vision earlier. It was a head fake. It was all right. So Enduring Games is going to be the go-to partner for creating original intellectual property and doing technical, creative, and consulting services for video game development. And we're going to be known for making those experiences that are special on the hardware on which they show up. And that is our vision for the company. Vision is what you are and what you want to be. Mission is how you get there. We make good games with good people, bringing lasting quality content to people to play on the things they have with them wherever they are. And then that's whether we're solely responsible for the thing or helping out a bigger team. We want to bring stuff to fans, and we want people to go, oh, we see that splash screen. We feel good about what's coming next. And that's really important for us. Years and years ago, when I was on the product side for Visa, when I was working with teams, I would talk about, we want to make good products with good people. Then I went over to emerging game technologies, and it was games. And so as I'd work with my 86 clients or so, it would be, I want to make good games with good people. I want to help you make good games with good people. And that was the thing that really landed with me because I'm a gamer, and I want to help people make games, even if I'm just the guy on the middleware side helping other people. I want those things to be successful. And then I kind of went through some iterations at Disney where you don't bring in external slogans. And that sounded snarky. It was meant to be snarky. Anyway, we'll go on to the next thing because it's recorded, so Disney, there are snipers everywhere. So making a company that's successful, it's not guaranteed. And there's a couple kinds of success at least, right? There's success in the moment. And that success in the moment is super, super important, especially when you're starting a company. And even as this company evolves, I get way more no's than I get yeses. I get so many no's, and that gives me my biggest projects because I'm very picky about the things I do. I make sure that we get quality projects. I put my all into a project, and so I give pitches to people, and they'll come back, and some of the rejections will be, we know you've proven yourself to us across the last 4 companies, and we really like this, and you've answered all of our questions, and it's most thought out, and you have the best plan, but we're going to go with someone else. Like, literally, that's a lot of those discussions. And yeah, that's frustrating, but I get to have the conversations. Like, I got up to bat over and over and over and over again. For sporting fans, like a lot of the top hitters, they're at 700, right? They're not hitting 100% of the time. And then how much time we got?
Oh,
is that us?
no, it's not ours.
All right, I'm gonna ignore it then. Awesome.
Wire.
So anyway, so we're going we're going to keep swinging and swinging and swinging. We're going to do the things that make sense because there are things that are in our control. We're going to do those. There are things that are outside of our control. We're not going to worry about those. They're disappointing, but I'm not going to stress those things. All right, so let's talk some brass tacks for logistics for starting a new company. So you Google how to start a company in Austin. That's step one. I talked to someone who wanted to start a new company, and He actually hadn't done this step. I really do. Actually, you'll be surprised how much information you can get just by doing this. And then you do these 100 things. You figure out your 100 things, which is, so I literally have 100 things. So this is like the top, I don't know, 40 or 50 or something like this. I wish I had the earlier version of this, because it got very mind-mappy, and at some point it said like exfoliate and remember to hydrate or something. But there's a lot of stuff here that is everything from building the values to the brand, to the logo, to the style guide, and then throwing those things and redoing them, and doing the budget and redoing the budget. You make sure you take care of all your social presence, but building the brand all the way at the beginning, and knowing what you're going to build and what you're not going to build, making sure you're doing all the trademark work. I'm amazed by the companies that don't do trademark and copyright for their stuff. I could probably spend a week and own a whole bunch of companies' stuff, or at least turn a dime where they're like, oh, we want to buy our copyright back from you. So that feels really gross. And this information is way more available than it used to be. I mean, we have access to databases. You can find out what's trademarked and how to do it, and always work with good legal. Always work with good legal. Do not save money in the wrong places. Legal is one of the places that's the wrong place to save if you go with the wrong people. So in making a company valuable, which is what I want to do, and making it valuable both in the moment and after the fact, I am building brand value. That means Joe user sees that splash screen and they're like, oh, I feel really good about the game that's about to show up on my screen. I'm also building brand equity, which means a partner says, ooh, we got to try to lock them in. And Adam's a portfolio guy, and this is going to be really hard because he's going to work with 3 different companies always in case we decide to cancel something so that he's not left without a company. So we got to make this valuable to him. And it leads to M&A discussions or other stuff later. And then I have a series of commercial goals and aspirational goals. And knowing the end game for your whatever you're doing, right? If you're doing a company, or a studio or whatever else, you want to know what is the success criteria for you for the thing you're doing. I've got a bias that a bunch of friends of mine share, which might be why we're friends or vice versa. But I honestly think that people have exit as their end game, and that's driving all of their decisions. They're not fully committed to the thing that they're doing. And that's a little black and white. But what I mean by that is if my goal is how do I turn this thing and sell it as quickly as I can for me, I'm going to be missing a lot of the work that needs to happen for building the culture, the values, the diversification of the studio, the opportunities that come up. I'm involved in a ton of startup scene stuff in Austin, which is a great town for it. And I got into a collegial discussion with a friend of mine where I'm like, I love a lot of the stuff that you share, and a lot of the stuff you share is absolute garbage. Because it's all about how do I make this thing sellable in 2 years? If it's not, how do I start the next thing while I haven't finished this thing? Because that's my goal, and I want to do 1 out of 4 of these that banks, and I want to do 12 of these before I retire. And that doesn't help someone who's trying to build a viable business, who's like, I am planning the next 10 and 20. I have a 5-year budget, a 10-year budget, and then a 20-year squishy budget, which I think has unicorns or something. Accountability, so I want to talk a little bit about societal versus personal accountability. And this is kind of the surprise. Societal accountability is personal accountability. So I want to talk a little bit about containers. So containers are like society, company, whatever else. Those are just containers that hold people. What we do well, what we do badly. We talk about good companies, bad companies. That's just a soulless entity that holds a whole bunch of good people or bad people, or people making good decisions or bad decisions. It's too easy to be dismissive and say, oh, society is going in the toilet. No, a whole bunch of named individuals are going in the toilet. And I'm either part of that or I'm standing against it. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, oh, this company sucks. Well, what does suck about it? Like, am I part of the suckage? How do I fix that? All right, so let's talk some action items. I don't know how this is going to work out for anybody. First bucket of action items is stand against the bad. And I mean this really seriously. So, quick word about good and bad is I'm of a mindset that there's no one good, not one. But I'm not at all a cultural relativist in any way. But given that people are basically behind the 8 ball and we're trying to get better, I think that it's important to recognize there are people who choose incredibly bad behavior and abusive behavior, or are behaving that way and haven't been held accountable. And then there are people who are scraping away and trying to make ourselves better. So I don't think relativism is valid. And if you disagree and you're a relativist, it's fine because you're a relativist. So I'm also right. So it works out really well. So I win twice, which is really fun. And if you believe that people are basically good and you disagree with me, I need the last 3 years of my life back. All right. So action items: standing against the bad, liars. So this seems obvious, but it's super subtle if we compartmentalize when we care or don't care when people lie, right? There are some things that might be more impacting to your day-to-day job, where you have projects that are due and you have people that consistently just aren't done when the thing is due, but they've never said, hey, it's not gonna be ready, and then it's not ready, and then a whole bunch of people are impacted. Now, there are different reasons why this happens. Sometimes it's a fear of penalization, sometimes it's a fear of perception, or other things. Sometimes it's just flat out being irresponsible. And then there are people who lie because it's sometimes a maturity thing, or sometimes it's I don't want people to know my shortcomings. I don't want people to know my gaps. I don't want people to use things against me, which is kind of a commentary on people that they're circling with. And then there are things that we might ignore, where someone is lying and it doesn't seem relevant at all, right? You tell someone, hey, can you go check with the maintenance person and find out if they're doing anything on their building this weekend, and they say, yeah, I already checked with the maintenance person. And then you find out they didn't check with the maintenance person, right? It's not related to the project or anything else, but if someone's gonna lie in something that doesn't matter, chances are they're gonna lie to protect themselves when they feel like they're gonna be negatively impacted. If people don't know Saga, the comic book series, I really recommend it. Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples are amazing. And not just Saga because it's trendy and hipsters love Saga, which is not to beat up on hipsters. That's another container. Hipsters are good. See, these are the things that will make snippets, and I will get hate mail for. Hipsters are actually kind of the new posers, and so, but what if they mean to be? Then they're like the ultimate hipster. All right, underperformers. So when people sandbag because they don't want to work, that can be a bunch of things. It can be laziness, it can be fear of growing, it can be a lifestyle mentality that doesn't match with aspirational work. It can be, I am just overwhelmed and it's not going to get better, so I'm just going to do as little as possible because I'm just doing time until this gets is done. But it's definitely a problem, because if you're building a high-performance, high-potential organization, this is a blocker all the time and just weighs everybody down. The seditious. So there are people who will destroy companies, and it amazes me that, and I have found people like this who do this on purpose and enjoy it, and it is terrifying to be around those people where they get their jollies from instigating a bunch of people against other people. But then there are people who, they have a problem with someone, and so rather than go to the person, they'll do an end run and build a bunch of people up, or say, I can't believe so-and-so does this all the time. And it builds this distrust over time. That's not a person you want in any sort of authority or leadership position, and be really careful even around coworker positions. If someone wants to badmouth and gossip and rumor and stuff like that, life's too short. All of us are just trying to do what we can, and if we're not, we need to motivate each other to do what we can. We don't need to tear people down. There's a CNN Business that had an article, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and they were talking about what if your boss hates you, and how do you survive within that. And a lot of people kind of took the top lines, and just like a lot of things today, nobody reads the whole generalization. A lot of people don't read the whole thing. But part of what I was talking about is, hey, it's not that your boss hates you, but you think he does, or there's an issue you got to work through. But even if he does hate you, here's the things you don't do. You don't run around and get all sorts of people mad at him. You don't go around and not do your work. You're like, oh, it doesn't matter, and I'm going to impact my coworkers because it's not going to matter for my boss. And it has a whole list of other things. But that's another kind of sedition, and usually it's part and parcel with some other stuff. All right, the entitled, and there's kind of a continuum for the entitled. There's the naive, but teachable, the clueless but reachable, and the obtuse and the narcissist, and the knowingly selfish, which I would argue are unreachable. And the entitled are a challenging group, because on the one hand it can be a maturity or not having been challenged before, or a personality thing or things like that, but it's things you help people with. And then there's some personality things where, like, hey, I honestly just don't see that. I'm sorry, I don't see that. But the person who wants to grow out of that surrounds themselves with people who do. There are some great leaders who've written some books who talk about, I just miss stuff all the time. So I surround myself with people who can see those blind spots and fill them in for me. The obtuse, narcissist, knowingly selfish, people who are choosing to gain at the expense of other people, good luck with that. The narcissist, Dr. Chris Thurman writes a bunch of books, but one of them is like The Lies We Tell Ourselves, More Lies We Tell Ourselves, really should tease him more about that sequel. But one of the things he talks about narcissists, and he's a recovering narcissist, but he talks about you can't change this kind of person. They have to crater and hit rock bottom and realize on their own, oh my gosh, I have to change, or it doesn't happen. But you don't have to be part of the splash damage. There's a book, Slicing Pie, which is part of what I use for my equity model and things like that. And one of the comments he makes, everybody who works in the company is contributing to it and is giving of their time and building equity without taking salary and things like that's a grunt. So he has this allegory of you need to work with people you can trust. You can't trust people who aren't willing to treat you and the other members of the team fairly. A greedy fat grunt is someone who's comfortable benefiting at the expense of others. There's a word for people like this. That word is asshole. It's best not to do business with assholes. That's business partners, clients, people you work with, bosses. It's a continuum, so don't go and like call me tomorrow and say, I quit yesterday and told him he was an asshole, because I will probably just hang up. All right, and so I have another anecdote about an entitled person. And it amazed me because this guy would do and say things that were knowingly selfish for his benefit and at the expense of people around him and the project. And he would constantly use this phrase. He's like, he'd do the thing or say the thing, and then he would say, I'm so entitled, I'm such a millennial. So no, I am not a fan of a society being blamed for individuals' bad behavior. I am less of a fan of a member of that generation blaming their own generation when they're already behind the 8 ball and having to have that argument all the time unfairly. I am less of a fan of a person who knows this is a character flaw and defect and making light of it and choosing never to grow. Watch for those kind of things with people. So hard not to name names throughout this entire. So standing against the bad, some quick warnings as we kind of go into the home stretch and don't throw things at me. And this is not across the board, but these are phrases or things to evaluate, and a lot of it is about intent. And a quick word on intent. You know, I talked about that we're in a society now where we will spend more time making someone wrong than we will doing what's right. It used to be someone could say something that they shouldn't say, and it could be sexually inappropriate or racist or whatever else. And it used to be people were like, okay, well, did he or she mean to say that? What was the intent? Like, was that just a gaffe and they didn't even understand that to say gypped is to slight gypsies? Like, is it just something they didn't know? But now we assign intent to people. We're like, oh, he meant to do blah, blah, blah. And we don't know. So as you look at these things, make sure you're not jumping on them just because the phrase matches something on a PowerPoint slide, which is a terrifying way to live. I can only imagine. But if somebody says it's just business, that is a red flag, right? That can sometimes be used as an excuse for I'm doing this thing and I don't have to be human about it because the business needs it. On the flip side, it's not personal. This is very rarely true, right? You lay somebody off and you unemploy and uninsure them and their family and things like that and say it's not personal. Well, that's not. It's very personal, right? And a lot of times when people make people go away, it can be personal, and they found a vehicle to make it happen. Maybe doing the right thing means different things to different people. I had a person of authority years ago. She came in and there was this thing that was happening that I was standing up for. And she was coming in because there was going to be some political fallout because of it that would impact her. So she came in and she said this. And before she could say her next thing, I said, okay, so time out real quick. Like if you want to have a conversation that maybe I'm missing something and I'm taking a harder stance about this thing than I should, I'm totally willing to have that conversation. If you're coming in here and you know what I'm doing is right and you're going to try to talk me out of it, we probably shouldn't have the conversation. And then she just like backed out of the room. And then I was gone later. So this phrase bugs me. We do a little worse and go backwards before we can go forwards. This is someone choosing to fail rather than drive the company forward. And there are organizational change books that will have versions of this phrase in there, identifying people who don't understand that this is not a viable mode of change. It's a version of sandbagging. We're aiming at the same thing. We're aiming at getting 75% there. I was talking to a friend who left a company years and years ago making games because they were always aiming at 75% Metacritic. And so they were doing work to make that game rather than going to try to make the best game they could make. Ironically, ended up at another studio where they were aiming at 92%, and it drove him mad. It's like, why wouldn't we just aim for 100 and see if we get... I just want to come in, do my hours, and leave. That's another version of a sandbagger. Now, sometimes people have to retrench, and sometimes people have to do some things. I'm not talking about abusive work practices or any of that kind of thing, but I am saying if there are people who come in, do time, they don't care about whether the thing is done or not done, they don't care if dependency chains are met, that's something to be aware of. What I know is no one is going to get more than me, right? That's a glass ceiling implementation where someone has decided their value is more than your value or so whoever they're talking to. And that's a very legacy mindset. Again, you look at any sort of startup or equity books and you'll see phrases like these. I'm more intelligent than anyone that works here. I actually had someone say this once, and I'm just like, that may be true, and I can't tell, but the hard attitude bothers me. So, maybe you and I can push out so-and-so. This is sedition. I've seen people do this where they feel like, okay, we're not getting the answers we want, but maybe if you and I get together, we can go discredit this person. And I don't mean get together and we're on the same page and let's go and see if we can understand and come to a meeting of the minds. This is a more, how do we cause problems for somebody? So-and-so might not be who you think he is, right? That's just disparagement, right? That's just casting doubt and trying to mess with people. And sometimes people do it for the wrong reasons where they think there's legal issues with that. This is disparagement, right, from a legal perspective. Non-apology bingo, which is, I'm sorry you feel that, I'm sorry this happened to you. There's a whole bunch of non-apology things that people will say sorry for where they don't really mean sorry. I had a person I worked with who was just, he was so bad at this, and it was driving me nuts in every meeting I went to. So I created a non-apology bingo card with all of the phrases. And I thought, this will keep me sane. I'll be in the meetings, I'll just bring this every meeting. First meeting, I got double bingo without using the center square. And I was furious. I should put that online. I should put the non-apology bingo card online. So saying this, but be careful. So the delusional, who don't know what they're doing is so damaging and destructive, and the choosing to be bad and abusive are different kinds of dangerous. And you want to be very careful about what you're taking in hand while you try to deal with some of these things. And I recommend anytime you're in a situation where it's impacting you, and a good indicator is like, I can't sleep because I'm in this bad situation with this person. Get people of authority and maturity, and this actor's amazing, by the way. This is just from Shawshank Redemption. Just as the warden, that's the knowingly evil plus obtuse. He's amazing. Anyway. All right, bucket of action items for being good. Be a certain. There are so many opportunities. If you don't know, this is the real Patch Adams. But there are so many opportunities to help, right? And I think that's everything we do at work, right? It's I don't mind cleaning the break room, right? I don't mind straightening out the fridge. I don't mind taking out the garbage or spending time with the custodial staff and just seeing what they're up to. Be humble. This industry is amazing with this mix of tech and art and business, and we have some people who have all of that or any one of those, and they are all more amazing than me. And I am just amazed and gratified, and I don't think I have a leg to stand on. That doesn't push me down at all. That's exciting and elevating and encouraging and recharging. Be grateful. We get to work in one of the best industries in the world. I was a worldwide technical director for Visa on an upward track. It's kind of a good gig. It's more lucrative than anything I've done since. But it was not what I was passionate about. I am a pop culture guy. I am animation. I am video games. The first time, when I first got into voice acting, I did it because I wanted to be doing something with games. And that wasn't enough, and so I changed careers and got into games. Because I want to be an active contributor to this thing that I consume. I don't want to just be a taker. I want to give, and I want to give big. So I'm super grateful to be in the industry. Aspirational. We get to do things and impact people and make change, and so choose those things. Like, what can I do that elevates people around me? Like, yep, we're all down, but I'm going to go do this thing, and it may be dumb. I have culture stuff that I do for my studios where I make jokes about things or have phrases that I use that's kind of a modern version of your face. I also use your face. But I like to have levity and fun and bring people together in a way that's meaningful. Be passionate. Why do what we're doing unless it matters? Why do what we're doing unless we're uniquely positioned to make the thing amazing, amazing. There's no reason to do something unless it needs to be done, and then there's no reason to not make it excellent. I miss him a lot. All right, so some examples about passion and where that can lead to some successes. So I met Dave Haywood, who's the head of Psionics, which does Rocket League and was recently purchased by Epic. And I met him around, I think it was the launch week, where the game came out and fell over. And I was in San Diego, because I was there for a Comic-Con, and I got a call from an unidentified number from someone who didn't identify himself and said, hey, can you get a beer right now? I'm like, sure. I didn't know who it was. So let's get a beer. And I'm pretty friendly. So I went, it was him. They were working on the game because it was brand new. The success had been good because of the PS Plus launch. And they were focusing on the server and network infrastructure side of things. And so they were talking to us about doing the Xbox One version, which we did. Then we also pitched and did the Ps4 Pro update, which is an idea that we had because we had visibility to what was coming next for the Ps4 Pro, and then they plussed it with the Hot Wheels agreement and the stuff they were doing with Warner and things like that. We did some cross-platform work as part of that, and then we pitched and did the Nintendo Switch version also, which is actually something that I sideways mentioned to him the day I met him when we were discussing the Xbox One thing, but I couldn't say anything about it because I knew about the hardware, but you always have to protect confidentiality. So I did this like, there's this other hardware that would make a lot of sense, but I can't say anything about it, and he's just trying to solve the problem. It's like, I gotta do this thing. And just cycled back to that over the years, and then finally we're able to do that in partnership with Nintendo and with them. And then obviously, Psionics, they're the ones who make the game, right? They make it, and they make it amazing, and we get to be parts of it where we did the Xbox One and the PS4 Pro and Nintendo Switch, and they're just amazing. I'm so happy for those folks. Another example, and this is a long lead on, Torchlight 2 just came out on Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. I reached out to them, Runic Games at the time, in 2009 when the original Torchlight for PC was released. Between Emergent Game Technologies and Disney, when I moved back to Austin, ahead of my family, for 6 months I moved 12 times, just couch surfing all the time, while my family was still in North Carolina trying to sell our house at the kind of the bottom of the down economy. And I was playing this game all the time. Because it was my sanity when I wasn't either at work or and being apart from my family. And then I reached out to them in 2010 when Torchlight 2 was announced. I reached out again in 2010 when the original Torchlight for console was announced. At the time it was PS3 and 360. I reached out to them again, and there's interaction back and forth between them and me with this stuff. Reached out in 2011 when the original Torchlight for 360 was released. Reached out in 2011 about a blog post I'll talk about in a minute. Reached out in 2012 when Torchlight 2 was released for PC. Multiple conversations over the last several years. And that led to being part of working on Hob for PS4 and PC in 2017, led to Hob for Nintendo Switch and Torchlight 2 a week or two ago. And that's not accidental or opportunistic. That was deterministic and relationship based. I've stayed in touch with those people that have gone from Runic to Perfect World to Monster Squad to these kind of things. So this is the blog that I reached out to them about, which has got them to go like, they came back to me. So this is, my kids watched me play Torchlight, and then they did this reverse paper prototyping, which I love. So they started with like this, just writing everything down and all of the stats and things like that, and then they said, oh, that's really a pain. So we're gonna have a separate sheet where we're gonna have these cards for all of the characters, and we're gonna fill these things out. They said, we have to keep erasing, and this is really a pain. So they did separate cards that they cut out, and they would have, so they could just lay them over top of things. These are 4 and 6 years old, by the way. And then they went and they got all their toys and everything. And like I found out about it because it's like 6 a.m. and I hear them outside the door, and I'm like, it's the one day I get to sleep. I'm just gonna ignore them. And I hear them out there again, and then again, and they come in and they do all this. I'm like, these children don't know this isn't normal, and I love it. But they reached out to me, but also as we were doing all this other work, that led to all the things, including doing Torchlight 2. So you see this through line all the way out, and this is across 10 years and 3 companies. This is not a just showed up. This is not a, we're doing all this visibly successful work, and then we're going to do this little PS4 and PC help on Hob, and then that led to a conversation where we get to do Hob on Nintendo Switch, and then that led to Torchlight. No, this started with doing something with Torchlight, and because of that passion and that excitement and that through line, and even as people were transitioning from Runic Games to their other things, Marsh Leffler worked really hard to make an introduction for someone in Perfect World and me to talk about this because of that history over the years. Now that's not to say, oh, look at me, I was like a little fanatic over 10 years. It was something I was passionate about and I cared about, but it was also commercial, right? There's lots of things I'm passionate about, and people are like, Adam, do you want to remake such and such game? Because we've heard you're a fan of it. I'm like, nope, because that will not play today at all. I can't even reimagine it. It will not work. No, thank you. Rocket League, I think it's commercially successful. I feel good about it. Torchlight 2, very commercially successful. I imagine the console things will be as successful. I'm excited about that. So even the passion I have, I make sure that passion takes a secondary and is in partnership with commercial. It doesn't override stuff so that I miss things and do things I shouldn't do. And also don't fake this, right? You don't want to be the person who said, I don't really care about Torchlight 2, it's a really old game, and then when it's successful, they're like, oh, I always loved Torchlight 2. Or the person who says, you know, Diablo 3 is a better game, and then Torchlight 2 comes out and it gets rave reviews, and they're like, oh, I've always loved Torchlight 2 and thought it was better than Blizzard or Diablo 3. Liar. That goes back to the liar cat thing. Okay, be compassionate, right? It's really good to be going a million miles an hour. I've talked before about how strengths or weaknesses. One of my strengths is I really don't care what people think of me. That doesn't give me value. I have value because of who I am. I have to do something because of that. If I'm not careful, that's my weakness. I will blow past feedback. I will steamroll people. I will do things I shouldn't do. This is a picture. My daughter just recently started raising hamsters. So she's taking pictures constantly because her older sister just went to college, and so she is taking pictures and sending them to her sister as a way to stay connected and all this kind of stuff. So we have this thing where we have 10 or 11 baby hamsters, and you have to leave them alone, and you don't want to scare them, and you don't want bad things to happen. But she came to me one day and she said, okay, and I'm trying to do the company, and I'm doing all this stuff, and she's like, I think one of the hamsters might have died. Like, we're outside of the kind of the danger zone, and so it's kind of a little weird that this happened. I'm like, well, hon, you gotta find out. We gotta find out if this thing did or didn't make it, because you can't leave it in, because it's old enough now that this will cause some other problems, or if it was younger and this happened, mom would take care of it, and all of this stuff would be different. So she went in, she checked, she's like, yep, it's dead, and she's like, can I go ahead and bury it? And so she does, and she's kind of glib about it and all this other kind of stuff. So I gave her a day, which was my plan to give her a day, and I gave her a second day because I got wrapped up in work stuff, which I shouldn't have done. And then I realized that I was wrapped up in other stuff that was not as important. I said, hey, hon, come here for a minute. I want to talk about the baby hamster. And she said, yep, I'm fine. I'm like, are you? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay, let's just sit here for a minute. And taking that time, and you got to do the same thing with people you work with. And now you have to be careful. There's a boundary line. You do not want to parent your employees. As my wife says, your family does not want to be managed, which I may or may not fall into sometimes. But there is compassion. There is being more than just about the work. I have sat in a conference room with a colleague and cried with him when his dad passed away unexpectedly. And I've also made sure to close the blinds and things like that so that he's not embarrassed and he can have his time and deal with that. And there is I am ashamed to say, there is a portion of me that is, I do wonder how long this is going to take, because I'm going a million miles an hour. But there's also the very human side of me that says, I will choke you, and you're going to stay in here with him. Being compassionate is super important. All right, I'll form the head. So giving, be giving. There's so many opportunities in town and in the industry to help. A lot of things I care about are Gamers Outreach and Girls Who Code and Sundragon and Operation Supply Drop and Stack Up and Non-Pareil Institute for autism awareness and training, and KUTX, which is listener supported radio, y'all. They're not a sponsor of the show. And there's always people in crisis. You want to be able to give, not for the sake of saying, oh, we're a company that gives, oh, look at us, let's get some visibility with this. You want to do it because we have, so we should give. And doing that is pretty amazing. We did a hurricane relief thing as employees a couple of years ago, and we had the digital extremes people were like, hey, we just need you to be ready. We just need you to be ready. We're not gonna say why, but we need you to be ready. And they just came in with this massive donation because they just wanted to help. And they didn't even make noise about it. I made noise about it, which is always kind of what you want. You don't want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing, but if people are excited and encouraged, you want them to be excited and encouraged. Be hardworking. It is going to beat you down, and that doesn't mean you don't take a beat. It doesn't mean it's you know what, I need a mental health day. It doesn't mean you know what, it was so miserable overnight and I didn't sleep because I'm stressed about things, so I'm going to be late today. Just make sure you're taking care of people, but do that hard work. Just constantly be pushing forward, because if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. Be teachable. When I interview and hire for people, I look for base skills, I look for the aptitude to learn more, and I look for teachability. I have seen people who come in who do not have the base skills, but they have tremendous aptitude and they are hungry to learn. I have people who have come in and they have base skills, but they cannot learn anything else. And the teachability does not help them on that front. And then I have had people who come in that have amazing base skills, who have the aptitude to learn so much more, and they are not teachable. There was a guy I tried to hire once who did not have the base skills, but he just knocked it out of the park in the interviews that we did. And so we said, hey, you don't have what we need, but we think we can get you there. It's a whole different language that we got to teach you and everything else, but we want to get you there. And he said, that's great. I just need to be a technical director. I'm like, you don't even have the base skills. You don't have the leadership skills. You don't have the management skills. He said, well, I'll find someone who will make me a technical director. So we passed on him amicably. He goes somewhere. He's a technical director. That goes bankrupt. He hits us back up and says, look, I'm really sorry. I've learned. I've done a lot of the stuff that you wanted me to do, and I did that over the last 11 months. And I'd like to take another swing at this. And I said, that's great. You were a yes before. You're a yes now. Let's just have you come in. He said, that's great. My only requirement is I need to be a technical director. I'm like, you learned nothing about the most important thing you need to learn about, which is that teachability and growth side of things. So do things that matter. Do things that last. Be long-standing in your relationships and the things that you produce and the mentality that you have. Starting a company, why would we do this? I firmly believe that I cannot change the industry. I also believe I can change the industry because I can't top-down change what the game industry is or some of the dark that's there or the earned reputation or what's happening in the world with individuals or things like that. But what I can do is affect my team and affect my studio and affect my clients I work with and affect my platform partners and the gamers that we touch. So these concentric circles of influence just keep expanding and making the things that I'm involved in a little bit better, even if I'm not involved anymore. So you do this kind of stuff, and you're going to have people who stand against you. You're going to have people who are nonplussed, people who grimace at you, people who smirk at you, people who are just mad or say I'm going to spew at them because you always talk about values. And you're going to have the bad you should not work with. Yes, they're all there. All right, so I've got my 10 on there. All right, so Johnny Cash, I don't like this. Actually, I really like this picture. What I don't like is a lot of people will do things like this in a combative way, right? It's the same way as if someone is like, and I apologize for this, but if someone says like, you're a dick, right? Which is a sexually charged, demonetizing, abusive phrase, sometimes used in someone trying to get out of being physically or sexually hurt, which is just a bad kind of ironic. And I think the combative side of things just shuts down conversations, and that's something we don't want to do. I get this, and I kind of want to do this all the time, and I get why there are shirts of this. I really like this. I like Johnny Cash through time, all of the American stuff, the Rubenstein stuff that was produced, and this is either from an interview or from the video for Hurt, the cover he did of Trent Reznor's song. This guy just did stuff throughout and grew throughout. Actually, if you look at his face, so I don't know if people know this, so Johnny Cash at about this age was having some oral procedure and had his jaw broken accidentally. And he's been very vocal about his substance addiction past. And so you have this guy who's got a broken jaw, who's a singer, talker, doing all these interviews, and he would not take pain medication because of his prior addiction issues. Part of why he did the cover for Hurt, he said in an interview, was because it is one of the best songs about being terrified of addiction that he'd ever heard, and he wanted to do something with that. But that kind of just resolve and character amazes me. And he also said, it's good to know who hates you, and it is good to be hated by the right people. There are a lot of people who do not like me. Surprise. And there's some people that grieves me, right? There's some people that I've had some fallouts with where I think we could resolve it, and then we just have not amicably been able to do that. There are a few people who they will say, yeah, I do not like Adam Creighton. I love for them to say that because it is a dividing line for the people that they will socialize with. It is good to be hated by bad people. Yeah, so you're gonna have people who don't like you, don't do this. On the flip side, you're gonna have a lot of people who do. You're gonna have people that will stand with you, who will be in your corner if things come to blows. And that gets to be a lot more. I mean, think about it. Like if you say you were in some sort of formal situation where you got to line people up on one side of the courtroom and another, and you're like, okay, here's the people who don't like you, want to badmouth you, and here's all the people who do, and there's just this overwhelming sea of people. I am super confident that if I ever had to pit a awesome, ugly version of Red Rover, between my past colleagues and clients and partners and customers and all this stuff, that there would just be a sea of people who have had my back and I've had theirs. Don't do it for this, right? This is symptomatic of doing it right. Do it for them, right? Not for this. All right, so we're good on that. I think we're going to take a break.
Yes, why don't we do that? Everyone take out your timepieces and count 10 minutes from now. You want to get another drink or use the restrooms, which are out in the hallway?
Lots of drinks, lots of pizza left.
We would like not to take some home. Yes. How are you doing? Very good.
Really still here.
Oh, cool.
Go to the home office.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times people will take that and put it as a component in gaming devices, whether that's things like Nintendo Switch or 3DS or those kind of things. So a lot of times it's a component piece. It's usually by way of someone like Nintendo does theirs through the displays. They would advertise those and put them into Nintendo Switch. Yeah, you bet. Yeah, man, good to see you.
You too.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Yeah. Hey.
And I just wanted to appreciate some of the things you said about all that stuff, and I can even recognize some of the bad habits I've had. So
awesome.
At companies in the past, I'm like, oh yeah, that's bad. That's something
that's awesome.
I want to be better at. And I appreciate you just mentioning, like, here's bad, don't be that. I'm like, and I'm glad to say I'm better at my current role. It suits me much better, so it's easier to do that.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. It's encouraging.
But thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. I'm going to still be in the background.
All right,
I'm
cool.
going to go get some more pizza, but I wanted to say
I appreciate that. Thank you, Eric.
I can get you another drink here.
I'm doing okay so far. I actually should be drinking better.
Well, the one's over there is cold.
Oh, you want to grab that? Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, mine was a couple years ago. Right last time I was here. How you been?
Well, I think I was just starting my MBA program there now.
Oh, congrats. Very cool. You're like done that now or almost done?
I graduated in May, so I've still got 2 more semesters. So did you have during games up and running last year?
No, this is something I started actually formally launched in July of this year.
Okay.
Brand new. Yeah. Excited about 7 people, a few more here. Announced some of them, but yeah, it's really great. It's fun. We're actually incubating inside of our craft entertainment space.
Gordon? Yeah, so I did a research project with one of the CS organizations on campus and introduced us to Gordon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, honestly, great, brilliant mind, learned a lot just about the industry in general. Both were great. Yeah, the experience was very nice.
Yeah, they are. It's exciting. It started